Hello, good day, and welcome to another episode of the ArenaCraft Podcast, a show dedicated exclusively to Magic the Gathering Arena. My name is Arjuna, I'm one of your hosts. I'm joined today by one of Arena's preeminent blue mages, the actual factual domestic partner to none other than Teferi himself. It is Covert Go Blue. How are you doing today, CGB?
Teferi's married, dude.
Is he married?
Don't know if you know this. He's got wife.
Well, that's why you're the domestic partner.
What? No, I'm married. Let's go there instead. I have wife. The rumors must be dispelled. Like, counter those instant rumors.
Yeah, I'm spreading disinformation.
I would like to place a mystical dispute with this information.
Yeah, well, my Sublime Epiphany's got something to say about that. Heyo! So, speaking of which, Standard has been getting interesting lately. We are hot off the heels of an SCG Tour event this weekend, which I think is kind of going to have to take the place of, like, our typical, what we got used to in the past with Magic, which was, like, the Week 1 Pro Tour event.
You miss it? I miss it.
Yeah, seriously, I do.
I miss it a lot right now.
Yeah, it was so much fun to like have a fresh format at a high competitive level. I just feel like that was like, it was super exciting for the viewers and it was super motivating for the pros. So yeah, so the SCG event took the place of that. We also have had some other small tournaments recently, but we are going to focus a little bit on the SCG this week, as well as just talking about in fair and good ArenaCraft tradition, this kind of first week standard evaluation that you and I have done for every set since I started the show. Yeah, I'm excited to dive into that. Anything notable before we just grab the bull by the horns?
Yeah, just on the note of those tournament changes, I know we don't want to do a show about this, but I have legitimately been missing not attending and playing paper Magic, because I haven't done that in a very long time. I probably would if I had been. But I am really missing watching competitive paper Magic. And I never thought that would be the case. I was so excited when Arena launched, and at the Mythic Invitational, its big coming out party at PAX East last year, I was like, man, this is the future. You got the people's in-person reaction, but the smooth digital client, it was easy to follow everything that was going on. Like, just the last few months, I just watch old Pro Tour footage, and I just remember everything had so much more gravity. You know, it felt like everything was so much more important. Like, it's hard to describe, but if you go back, and I'm watching Magic Pro Tour 2015 for Core Set 2015, that's what I'm watching right now, like, everything just felt so... like, there was so much weight behind it. The decisions were intense. The battles were close. The cards were interesting. The format had a lot of different decks. And it's like, man, I just want a little of that back. I really do.
I'm with you. I really miss watching, like, paper tabletop high-stakes Magic. I mean, just the feeling of being there with the players was a big deal. Some of the problems of the production values, like maybe the life totals not getting updated all the time or various things like that. But just like, you know, one of the things I really miss is that it actually takes a lot of skill to just handle a game of tabletop Magic. You know what I mean? To not miss your triggers, to keep track of everything, to keep track of your board state, and to be able to do it all in like a timely manner is like, it's an aspect of Magic that I think gets forgotten these days. And it's like, you know, there are certain people who actually have like showmanship while they're playing Magic, right? And that comes across a lot in person. And so, yeah, I'm totally with you. I miss that too. I really hope that we're going to see a return to it when it's possible again, because it would be really sad if that just died altogether. I like watching tournaments in Arena too. There's benefits to that, definitely. But like, sometimes it's just like watching another stream for me. You know what I mean? Like, there's no difference. It's just like I'm watching my favorite streamer on a Saturday, but instead of it being their random have fun stream, it's a high stakes tournament, you know? But the format looks so similar that it's kind of hard to tell the difference.
Yeah. I do want to give props, SCG. They weren't like Channel Fireball, like a week or so after the COVID cancellations really took hold, was outrunning some qualifiers. SCG canceled a lot of events, didn't really do much on the tournament side. Now it seems they're stepping in, hosting pretty big events that we're going to get to cover and give us an idea of the meta. So props to them. They're here for us. I appreciate it. It does feel a lot like watching just another stream, though, and most of the interaction we get that has any kind of personality or flair is seeing cards light up. So I think they did a great thing. They got Patrick Sullivan and Cedric Phillips back together, not together, but you know what I mean, on the booth, on the call, and they are the best of the best. So that's one thing I want to go back and watch.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, definitely recommend it if you missed it this weekend. So why don't we talk about it? I just wanted to say, okay, so there's a number of fun things about this tournament. I think the first thing that we have to mention is that the tournament was taken down by Aaron Diaz playing not one, but two main deck copies of Sublime Epiphany in a frickin' Temur Reclamation deck. Taste that, haters.
All right, but go on. Say your piece.
It was something else. It was something else watching that card get resolved in Standard. Now we did see it get Mystical Disputed a few times, which was painful. I'm not going to lie. It was painful, but we also saw it deliver just utter beatings as well. So, and if there's any deck that's going to do it, it's going to be the deck that has access to roughly 1 billion mana, right? So I think that the Temur Reclamation shell is probably the best shell to be playing it in at the moment. So that was really exciting. We're going to talk about that deck list in a moment. The other thing I just wanted to mention was this tweet that I saw from Eric Hawkins today saying mono green might just be the best deck in Standard. And, I think that this is something like we've been watching the kind of quiet ascension of mono green on the ladder. It's been, Rint just top for the Red Bull Russia event using the deck. It's had, I think it reached the semifinals of tournament last weekend. I'm trying to remember the CFB Pro tournament. So this just, as a mono green mage, it warms the cockles of my heart. And I don't know, CGB, is it time to call mono green tier 1 in Standard right now? He's just laughing.
It is another week on the Arena Craft podcast, and here we are yet again going back to having another mono green love fest with right from the get-go. One tweet goes out, somebody top fours an event, somebody says it might be the best deck in Standard. Oh my gosh. All right, okay. Yes, I will say that mono green could be the best aggro deck. If you're following that, I think that's fair. And I just don't think I can consider it the best deck in Standard because I don't know of anybody who builds their deck trying to beat mono green. I never do. I don't know of any, I look at these lists, and you've sent some of them to me, and we're going to go over them. And I'm reading these cards, and you could say Aether Gust is them trying to beat mono green. I think we all knew that when mono green was not even present in the meta, people were still all very high on Aether Gust. So I don't think that's it. Outside of Aether Gust, I don't see effort being paid to beat this deck. I see effort being paid to beat a lot of other decks that are still tier 1. I think that what mono green is the great hope that there's an aggro juke in a format that seems to be lacking one. And I think mono green is also, and you can tell me more about this and where I'm right and where I'm wrong, but my impression of the deck is that whether it's Jund with Witch's Oven and Trail of Crumbs and Citadel, whether it's Bant with Elspeth Conquers Death, or whether it's Temur Reclamation with Wilderness Reclamation, they're all cards that can take a Gem Razor beating. They're all Gem Razor blowout susceptible. And it's the best way to punish those things if people don't respect your deck. And like I said, I don't think anybody's trying to beat mono green. Can a deck be tier 1 with nobody trying to beat it? In theory, yes. In theory. I still just don't believe it.
Well, one of the questions I have to ask is how much tournament success and how high do you have to go in order to be considered a tier 1 deck, right? Because that's my question. I feel like, is it going to take winning a tournament for mono green to be considered one of the better decks in the format? I don't know. I think that it has had enough top finishes recently that I'm starting to consider it as a real player in standard.
It's one of the better decks, and it's a good aggro deck, which the aggro decks are pretty atrocious. So I mean, it's winning. It's winning at attacking, and I have no problem saying that. But I mean, can we go into it if you want to? Why is mono green better than it was 2 weeks ago?
Well, that's an interesting thing to answer, and I think that maybe if we go through some of these other decks that are being played, we can kind of tease that out a little bit. But I think that the deck, one of the big things that I've been seeing is that Scavenging Ooze is just a house in the current standard. And we're seeing a couple main deck copies of that card in other decks, but mono green is the only deck that I've seen so far that's just all in on main decking 4 of them, because it just makes sense for the game plan, right? It's just one of the stronger 2-drops in the format right now. And so I think that that's part of the success. I also agree with you that, so like, for example, I've been seeing a lot of this mono black on the ladder, and that's being kind of touted as one of the stronger monocolor aggro decks in the format. And if my experience is anything to go by, mono green has just been eating that deck alive. They have a hard time beating a Scavenging Ooze. Gem Razor can just come out of nowhere and knock your enchanted creature out of the sky. It also bodies mono red a lot of the time, so I think it being kind of like the apex predator of aggro decks, which I think I'm ready to go ahead and say that's the case. I think that puts mono green pretty far ahead. I think Eric Hawkins is probably being a little hyperbolic with his tweet, but I just wanted to mention that the deck is just it's moving higher up the charts, and I think that people should start taking it seriously.
How does one do that? That's the other thing that I look at mono green, and I'm like, okay, if we want to respect mono green, what should we play that beats it? And I look at the cards in a lot of these decks, whether it's, Claim the Firstborn, or whether it's Elspeth Conquers Death and Shatter the Sky, or Aether Gust, and I'm like, it seems like most of these decks are already playing tools that are really good against you. And I think that's part of the aggro conundrum. There's so many cards that just make aggro so miserable. If you really wanted to beat green even more, do you play more Storm's Wrath? That also seems like a huge beating. So I don't know. How is it against Ugin? I guess you need a Stonecoil Serpent?
Yeah, I think it's just like so many other things. It's like asking, how do you beat Temur Rec, right? The answer is, you put in some cards in your deck that are good against it, and then you just hope that tight play and luck gets you there. I think that that's the real... You could try to hard target the deck, but to be honest, a deck that goes turn 1 Pelt Collector into turn 2 anything, into, and just keeps putting these threats on the board, and then has finishers like Questing Beast, the Ceratops. Sometimes you just can't get there against them, you know what I mean? It's you could play an answer every turn of the game, and you're just not going to be fast enough, and your life total is going to keep dwindling, and they're just going to get you, right? It's kind of like playing against mono red. It's you can have answers, but if they have their perfect curve into Embercleave, they might still get you. So I'm not suggesting that people warp the meta around this deck or try to beat it further. I just think that I think people have thought of it as kind of the meme that could for a while, and I just think that more and more people are starting to think of it as a real deck in the meta.
I think it's reasonable that it be the underdog, because I think that's its best shot.
Yeah.
I think that's perfectly fine. Careful what you wish for. If people respect it, you might have a really bad time.
All right, well, I think that's been enough time devoted to mono green for this particular episode. Let's talk about this SCG event. We're going to look at a couple of deck lists here. Let's take a look at this winning deck list by Aaron Diaz. This is a Temur Reclamation list, and this list, if you're used to playing Temur Rec, there's a lot of eyebrow raisers in this list. So let's start right at the top. This is a Chris Kavatek style Reclamation list, starting with 4 Nissa Who Shakes the World main deck. If that doesn't tell you something about this deck, I don't know what will. No one else that I know of recently has been playing Nissa in their Reclamation decks. So that's pretty sweet. Another interesting thing that I see this deck doing is it's running 2 main deck copies of Jolrael Mwonvuli Recluse, which has typically been considered more of a Bant card in this meta so far. So that's really cool. And then, as an additional ramp package, and one of the many ways in this deck that you can actually turn on Jolrael, they're also running 2 copies of Llanowar Visionary. We've got 4 copies of Oro, 3 copies of Wilderness Reclamation, 4 Growth Spirals, 4 Expansion Explosion, 4 Mystical Dispute, 2 Ether Gust. None of that is particularly surprising or radical. But then, at the top end, 2 copies of Sublime Epiphany, along with 29 lands. So this is like quite a revolutionary take on this archetype. I'm seeing 10 cards in the main deck, which are not cards you would ordinarily see run in this list. This deck took down the tournament, by the way. This deck took down multiple copies of Bant in the top 8. It took down a couple of aggro decks. We had mono green aggro, we had mono red aggro, and there was also a copy of Sultai in the top 8. So this deck beat them all. So I'm just curious, as someone who didn't watch the tournament, CGB, how do you process this list?
So the Chris Kavartek thing is from Worlds, where he played for Nissa Who Shakes the World in Temur Reclamation. He didn't play any Storm's Wrath because of that. That was the big sacrifice at the time. This version of the deck has 3 Storm's Wrath and 2 Flame Sweeps in the sideboard. So there's much more respect paid to aggro, but only in the sideboard. The main deck just pretends aggro doesn't exist in the meta, which is reasonable considering the things that we talked about with 2 Aether Gust and 4 Mystical Dispute.
That's right. No hard removal in the main deck, right?
This is a Nissa deck first, right? I mean, it's 4 Nissa, 3 Wilderness Reclamation. This is a big mana deck, but it's not trying to ramp into Planeswalkers. It's trying to ramp into epic spells. Giant Explosion being 4 of them, but it doesn't want to run out of things to do with its mana. Hydroid Krasis is just another body with a few more cards. It wants to be able to really cement its position in the game. And what do we have? We have Sublime Epiphany taking a spot up there. I mean, the case against Sublime Epiphany is Mystical Dispute and that it's slow. So when you put it in a deck that makes more mana than the opponent's, and plays 4 Mystical Disputes of its own, so it can dispute the dispute on the Epiphany when it comes to that. This deck is going to have more mana than you, it's going to have Mystical Dispute as well, and it's going to have Sublime Epiphanies, which you probably don't have. So when you try to cast something big tap out like Ugin or Yorion, it's going to counter you, and it's going to get further ahead, and then it's going to just destroy you with Nissa or blow you out of the game with Explosion. So this deck is going way over the top. It's going over the top of other Reclamation decks with Nissa. It's going over the top of Bant decks with Explosion. It's going over the top of Sacrifice decks with both. And the Sublime Epiphany is it's another tool for that arsenal. The Llanowar Visionaries are really smart. They not only proc the Jolrael, but they ramp you to Nissa, but they are also a body you can copy with Epiphany that this deck is, for the most part, missing. So making a copy of a Visionary is big play. It's what my Sublime Epiphany deck was very much built around, so I love it. And Jolrael is really good in Reclamation. This is something I've been messing with. I have a Reclamation deck with 4 Jolraels in it right now. Because Reclamation is used to having to be defensive, especially in best of one, like against aggro and things like that. But if you just play a Jolrael and you add a 2/2 body to all the cards that you wanted to play anyway, like suddenly you can just straight either you keep up with their resources just fine, or you can beat down. And that is something that a lot of people aren't ready for. So this deck is this is the go big in the big go big format deck is what I'm looking at here.
Yeah, I think a Rec deck is one of the decks more likely to turn on Jolrael on the opponent's turn as well.
Mm-hmm.
So
yes, Explosion does it.
Yeah, so if you can like Oro on your turn and get a 2/2, and then Explosion on your opponent's turn and get another 2/2 mid combat, right? Like your opponent declares attacks, and you kill one of their attackers and make a 2/2, okay, that's a fancy play that might not actually happen in the real world. But that's just the kind of thing you could be doing.
And then here's the pattern people forget about. Like, the Jolrael has more text.
Yes.
Green 4. All creatures you control have base power and toughness equal to the number of cards in your hand. So how much was that explosion for? Was it for 5? Because if it is, you can probably untap and base power and toughness all your creatures to like 7/7s. I did 11/11s the other day. Yeah. It doesn't take many cat tokens to kill somebody when they're all 11/11s. No. This is probably the best deck for that extra text on the card.
One of the things that we didn't really think about when we first evaluated Jolrael is how insane of a combo it is with Nissa Who Shakes the World. So Nissa does 2 things for Jolrael. First of all, it makes that 6 mana cost of Jolrael's activated ability a lot less painful. Mm-hmm. And the second thing it does is that if you think about the Nissa lands, they are 0/0 creatures that get 3/3 counters on them, right? So imagine, let's say you have you've animated 2 or 3 Nissa lands. They're 3/3, they're 0/0 creatures with 3 counters on them each, right? And then let's say you just have a modest 4 cards in hand and you activate that ability and all of a sudden you have 3 7/7s. So, and you can do that at instant speed, by the way. So I think it just it makes blocking hard for your opponents. It makes attacking into your lands hard for your opponents if you have the mana untapped, which are more likely to with Wilderness Reclamation. You could even do something in this deck like you could attack, pump the team, untap your mana with Reclamation, and have it available for blocks on your opponent's turn. So, I mean, it's just the more that you look at the cards in this list, they just combo so nicely together. Nissa potentially doubles your mana for an even bigger expansion explosion. It makes Sublime Epiphany more castable. So this is a really inspired deck, I think. And if someone isn't going to go under this deck, then it's very hard to imagine winning against it.
Pop quiz.
Lay it on me.
Sublime Epiphany copies a land that has been animated by Nissa. What do you get?
What do you get? I think you get a 0/0 creature that... Oh, no. I know the answer to this. Only because I saw it happen. I would have thought you would have gotten a 0/0 creature that died, but you actually just get a copy of that land, right?
Yes. So in my case, I copied a forest, and I just had a token forest, not a creature.
Yeah.
Just free forest to go with my...
Which is starting to become kind of your signature, CGB, is casting expensive spells that leave you with a copy of a basic land.
Thanks. I guess that is one way to see my daily efforts.
So, yeah, anyway, I definitely recommend going and watching the replays of this tournament because this deck is just... It's a pleasure to behold, and it certainly delivered a metric stomping on these Bant decks in particular. Let's take a look at one such example. The second place Bant list by Nicholas Price. Now, a lot of the people in this tournament were playing lists that looked very, very similar. So I think that people have arrived on a close to stock list.
It's Croquis.
Is it the Croquis list? Okay.
Pretty close.
Do you want to read us through this list that we're looking at really quick?
One may be stunned to learn there are 4 copies of Teferi Time Raveler in this Bant list. Moving on from there, we have 3 copies of Nissa Who Shakes the World, 2 Teferi Master of Time, a single Ugin the Spirit Dragon, 3 copies of Uro, 3 copies of Jolrael, 2 copies of Hydroid Krasis, a single Scavenging Ooze, 4 copies of Shark Typhoon, 3 Elspeth Conquers Death, 2 Shatter the Sky, 4 Growth Spiral, and 28 lands. And I think the divergence here from what Croquis was doing is he had 2 Scavenging Ooze and 2 Jolraels, and in their place are the 2 Shark Typhoons. It was 2 Shark Typhoons instead of 4. So the only big difference is Nicholas Price went up on Shark Typhoon. That's the only difference I can see. And then we have Devout Decrees and Shatter the Skies, Aether Gust, Dovin's Veto, Mystical Dispute, Narset, 1 Scavenging Ooze, and a Heliod's Intervention in the sideboard. So... for somebody who's been watching the top streams and looking at the top deck lists for the last week going into this is the no spice, no fun entrant in these tournaments that I've been seeing over and over, almost exactly this list.
One of the things that stands out to me most about, and this was true of every Bant list in the top 8, they're all running one copy of Ugin the Spirit Dragon in the 75. So we're not bringing them in from the board, and I'm guessing they're probably boarding them out in a number of matchups. So I think that might be surprising for people who haven't been really following the format closely, because, you know, this is kind of the top end. This is like the game winner. This is the thing that you ramp into, right? So
let me read you. I can read you a tweet on this. Do you want me to?
Yeah, lay it on me.
So, like I said, Croquis has pretty much been playing this deck and succeeding at a very high level with it, like top 100 Mythic, since like the day the set came out. And he's been saying the whole time Ugin is, you know, it's another card, it's a tool, it's not a build around. And this is the exact tweet from 20 hours ago. PSA, Ugin is nothing more than an average playable card. An option for your deck, don't build around it. And, I mean, he's got the pedigree at this point. He was one of the originators of Bant Ramp in that we've become used to back in like February. And he's one of the most watched, he is the most watched Magic stream right now. And he's been really high on the Mythic ladder. And like we keep seeing this list over and over, and I think he's right at this point. I think the harder you go on Ugin, the more vulnerable you are to counter Magic and to people who just game plan against it and do so very well. What do you think?
Yeah, well, and here's another thing to note is that in this particular list, he's running 10 Planeswalkers. That's a lot of Planeswalkers, and I think that in a deck where your goal is to establish hopefully 2 or more Planeswalkers, maybe get an Elspeth Conquers Death onto the board, you've got a surprising number of colored permanents that you would really like to keep on the board. And so I think that makes a choice like Ugin a lot worse of a top end in this deck. You know, and I don't know much about the standards where Ugin was historically played in the past, but I would guess that it was a top end in more of your kind of like draw-go control deck, where Ugin might be the only permanent on the battlefield apart from lands, right, when you cast it on your side. Or maybe you had like a couple artifact enablers or something like that. So it makes sense in a list that's not trying to resolve that many permanents to have Ugin as your top end. But when, you know, I mean, this list has 3 Jolraels in it. You know what I mean? Like by the time Ugin comes down, you're fairly likely to have a Jolrael on the field and 1 or more cats on the field, and you're really not that excited to sweep them away. And spending 8 mana to cast a Planeswalker that essentially can lightning bolt any target every turn, okay, it's fine. I mean, it's a fine thing to have out. It's still a big threat, but it's hardly like the big top end in your list if you're not wanting to use that minus ability. So I can really see the wisdom of not wanting to go overboard on it in a deck like this. That's kind of my take on it.
Makes a lot of sense. I agree. I think that there are other strategies that would push it harder, and this one doesn't need to. If you play well, you always have cards in hand. You can't get beat by an Ugin, and you always have ways to deal with it, whether it's a large Shark Typhoon or whether it's Elspeth Conquers Death. Seems like the right idea for this style, because this style just always has options.
Yeah. I mean, Bant, it's such a strong color combo. This standard, it's historically just been an always. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that Bant has just been very strong in general for a long time. And just so many options in this format. I predict that one of the new packages that we're going to start to see until rotation is just decks running Nissa, Jolrael, Oro, Growth Spiral. Like, I think that's going to be just a really common package that you're going to see in Blue-Green X decks. And I mean, for good reason. It's a solid package. It's a lot of value. It's a lot of mana. It's just a lot of everything.
Yeah, that's a sweet 4-pack.
Yeah, basically it's just packing a lot of what's good in standard right now. Pretty hard to go wrong with putting any of those cards in your deck. All right, so let's move on. I don't want to spend much time on this deck, but I just want to briefly talk about the number 3 place Sultai ramp.
Why not? It's this package again, right?
It's the same package, right? So I'll read down this one. It's 3 Nissas, 2 Ugins, 2 Teferi Master of Time, 4 Krasis, 3 Oro, 2 Arboreal Grazer, 2 Jolrael, 2 Shark Typhoon, 4 Cultivate, which is interesting, 2 main deck Thought Distortion, which I'm guessing is just a metagame call there. 4 Growth Spiral, 2 Ether Gust, and 28 lands. And then the sideboard has just a lot of kind of answery cards like 3 Extinction Events, 3 Casualties of War, Mystical Dispute, some removal spells, one-off Scavenging Ooze, stuff like that. So yeah, I'm kind of with you. Like, this deck is just basically the Sultai version of the same deck, is how I think about this deck. I'm actually looking at this main list. Is this person only playing black to play Thought Distortion? Because that's what it looks like to me.
Yes.
Like Thought Distortion plus the sideboard.
Yes. Thought Distortion plus some sideboard cards.
So this literally reads to me like someone's hard targeting a Bant and Reclamation meta. That's what this deck looks like to me.
Yeah, there's no sweepers. There's almost no removal, unless you count the 2 Aether Gust and the Ugins in the deck, right? Like, we're just ignoring what the opponent is doing and trying to ramp into Casualties of War. Oh, wait, no, those are in the sideboard. Ramp into Thought Distortion. This deck basically says nobody cares about things that are on the battlefield anymore. The battle is all about having infinite resources in your hand and spells available to you, which is a lot of what Bant and Reclamation are playing for. So yeah, this is a super called meta shot that nobody's going to play aggro, and Thought Distortion is the actual Casualties of War that you want.
Yeah, I think this person is playing Thought Distortion in the place that Sublime Epiphany was played in that other deck that we were talking about. So that's kind of like that big top end play.
It's almost the same deck otherwise.
Yeah, it is. Now, I will note that they're running 2 Ugins, and if you look at the list, you can see why, because this list is very much more friendly to the idea of exiling the board. This deck is only playing 5 non-Ugin planeswalkers, and if it's only running 2 Jolraels. They're running Cultivate as a big ramp package, and so there's just a lot less permanence that this deck's trying to put on the board, and so it's more friendly to that big sweep effect. 4 copies of Cultivate, by the way, which is, we've been seeing this card in the format, but this deck is going hard, man.
I think 3 copies of Nissa is the weirdest part for me. I think it makes sense in Bant. I think this deck really needs it, though. And I'm kind of surprised to see like 4 Krasis and 3 Nissas.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think I agree with you. Krasis, so, you know what's interesting? Krasis is fine, but I feel like Krasis these days feels more like Growth Spiral to me than it feels like like the big scary Krasis of old. I don't know. I think it's a reflection on how powerful this format is, that like when your opponent untaps with Nissa and resolves a big Krasis, you're kind of like, oh, thank God, that wasn't as bad as it could have been.
You aren't playing many decks with burn spells in them then.
Fair. But I just think that Krasis is like, when you put Krasis next to some of the other cards in this format, like Oro, even Thought Distortion, it's just like, it's not the boogeyman that it used to be. And I think that more than anything, that's just a reflection on how powerful Standard is right now.
I agree. You're not wrong. It's kind of amazing how you're like, oh, thank God. All they did was like gain 3 life, draw 3 cards, and make a 6/6 flying trample. Maybe I can recover from this.
If that's where they're going to put that 8 mana, I'm fine with it. All right, so rounding out this top 8, let's take a brief look at Corey Baumeister's mono green aggro list that...
Wait, no. You said we were done with... You said that was enough time for mono green.
Okay. No. All right.
Okay, I'm just giving you a hard time. I'm deliberately giving you a hard time. I would not deprive you of this.
List, CG.
I would not deprive you. Okay, have fun. I honestly just wanted to give you a tough time.
Oh, I love it. Well, I'm a mono green mage, so my skin is thick. It's Barkhide Troll thick. All right. So why don't you do us the honors on reading this list here, CGB?
Oh my goodness. You're lucky. You're lucky I'm a good guy. All right. 3 Vivian Arcbow Ranger for the Planeswalker spot. 4 Barkhide Trolls. 4 Lovestruck Beasts. 4 Pelt Collectors. 4 Questing Beast. 4 Scavenging Ooze. 4 Stonecoil Serpent. 2 Gemraiser. 2 Yorvo, 2 Great Henge, 2 Ram Through, 1 Ranger's Guile, 19 Forest and 4 Castle Brig, and a Mobilized District for 24 total lands. Sideboard, we've got a bunch of, the full pack, 4 Shifting Ceratops, 3 Ocam Adversary, 2 Heroic Intervention, 2 Ram Throughs to complete the set from the main deck, 2 Gem Razors to complete the set from the main deck, and 2 Garrick Unleashed, the new Garrick sneaking into the sideboard. I want to know, and you can tell me, I'm going to throw this over to you. Where is the matchup where it's Garrick, not Vivian?
That's a really interesting question. My off the top of the dome thought is probably versus Bant. Probably decent. Also versus Rec, to be honest, where the pump from Vivian is not what's winning you the game. It's probably just keeping threats on the field that's winning you the game. I guess Garrick probably doesn't line up that well against specifically Nightpack Ambusher. But other than that, I think that it's probably pretty good in those matchups. The 3/3 blocks those Nissa tokens, and it can just kind of do something more relevant when your opponent's doing a pretty good job of just kind of gusting and dragon firing and just removing all of your permanents. So that would be my guess, but I have not actually played myself with Garrick Unleashed yet. Another thing that seems notably absent to me in this list is the Primal Might, which, a lot of mono green mages, including myself, have been appreciating that card. So again, it's probably a concession to thinking that aggro is not going to be very good in the format.
The higher level you go and the more open deck list a tournament is, the more instant speed is crucial, because even if you don't have it, you can bluff it. It's really hard to bluff a sorcery.
That's a good point. Well, and here's the other thing as well. So again, specifically in a Nissa metagame, it's so I've been playing a lot on the ladder with a Selesnya version of this deck, which we talked about before. And one of the main wonderful uses I've found for Ram Through is that your opponent resolves a Nissa and they animate a land and they expect to have that land as a blocker. And if you can just take it out on the end of their turn and then swing in and kill that Nissa, that's a huge game. It often takes everything you've got to get that first Nissa off the battlefield. So you do an end of turn removal spell, and then maybe you untap and you cast a hasty threat, or maybe another removal spell just to get the job done. But it can be really, really difficult to get that first Nissa off, and you really need to. And so having a cheap instant speed removal spell to do it is super important. So that's one of the ways that I read this. I think it's interesting as well that Corey's running 1 copy of Ranger's Guile in the main deck.
It's that open deck list thing, man.
Yeah, I guess so. I love it. I love it. Ever since that card was printed, I've had my eye on it. I'm like the Ranger's Guile fanboy, and I haven't been running it because it just seems like there's not a lot of spot removal in the format. I'm just curious whether it's actually going to end up being good. But clearly Corey thought that it was good enough to run main and also Heroic Intervention in the board, which is another card where I looked at it and I was like, okay, this seems like it could be good. But then when you actually think about how it plays out, is it going to be good? I don't know.
It's been annoying for me, the blue-white Wrath Mage.
Yeah.
Of course, most of my stories will end with me winning anyway, because I just wait till turn 7 so I can Teferi.
Exactly.
And then in response, they cast Heroic Intervention, giving their creatures indestructible, and I plus Teferi, and then I shatter the sky on their turn. But it does make me play differently, I suppose.
Yeah.
And that's better than just, getting swept. Quite frankly, it is.
I just think in a meta with Ugin as a top end, Heroic Intervention looks pretty laughable.
Oh yeah, so you don't want it there. That's why sideboard, man. Yeah, don't. It's pretty rough against Ugin.
I'm just trying to think about, there might actually be creature matchups where Heroic Intervention could actually be good for you, help you win a key combat, something like that, or even just 2 mana prevent a removal spell.
Are you suggesting attackers and blockers? Like interacting with each other? What?
I've been doing a lot of creature combat on the ladder, my friend, and it's actually one of the reasons I've been enjoying this standard format, is because there are there's like a lot of mono black aggro. There's still a lot of red, mono red on the ladder. There's people playing Paw Blade. There's stuff like this. So
yeah, this is the best of one advantage where aggro is still good in best of one.
Yes.
So you and I actually know what it's like either to swing or get swung on.
Indeed. So let's move on and start talking about some of these decks. There was a mono red list in the top 8, but it's literally running no new cards, and I don't know that we need to talk about it at all.
Literally nothing.
Yeah.
Just zero.
Zero new cards in the deck. There's
Sometimes
also
you wake up and you're red.
there's a Jun mid-range deck in the top 8, and I believe the only new card that they're running in this list is one copy of Solemn Simulacrum.
I also see 2 Scavenging Ooze.
Oh, 2 Scavenging Ooze. That's right. Yep, 2 Scavenging.
But for the most part, it's the Jun deck you know and love with... I think the big thing here is we got 2 Citadels, 2 Corvold, so it's a little indecisive on its top-end engine, but, I mean, they both win the game, darn it.
Yeah.
And we see them going down to 2 Claim the Firstborns and 3 Priest, kind of giving this nod that creatures don't matter, which is a theme in the top 8, aside from our 1 mono green hero.
You and I have both kind of alluded to it, but it's just kind of the case where if you want to be a top mythic gamer, then you need to worry about these kind of long mid-range and control decks. And if you want to be a best of one mythic gamer, you do have to respect the aggro plans more. So that's kind of like a lot of the disparity that you're going to see in the deck lists on those 2 versions of the ranked ladder.
And that's why we're important, because if a best of one mage, there's a lot of people who are going to do this. You guys will see it on ladder. Listeners, you're going to see it on ladder already. People are going to go snipe these lists, and they're going to go play best of one ladder with it.
Yeah.
And they're going to be confused. Why is it not going the way they want to? It's because they're very different formats.
Yeah, like if you're running Temur Rec in best of one, you'd best be running either the Scorching Dragonfire or the Soul Seer or just whatever it is, right? Maybe even main decking 1 or more copies of Storm's Wrath, because otherwise you're going to get got by some dumb Paw Blade deck and you're going to feel like an idiot. I think that's enough on the SCG tour that we can talk about today. I just kind of wanted to check in with you about what you've been seeing on the ladder CGB. I have some notes here. I'm sure that you also have some thoughts. So, like, what's the metagame looking like to you, just in the day-to-day?
Yeah, the metagame, I'm struggling. I'm actually struggling with it because it's very polarized now. On one hand, you've got the really aggressive red decks. People are going to play red no matter what. Mono black is starting to creep up there. I probably see 1 mono green a day. It's still pretty rare considering how effective some people think it is. But there's still a lot of aggression. I've seen more Gruul than I thought I would see. Like, just Gruul with Scavenging Ooze, basic, and pretty much doing its thing. But the sacrifice decks are still really good, and they attack from a different angle outside of combat. That reoccurring damage, reoccurring value, it's very hard to manage. And then if you somehow battle both of those, you've got the people who are still like on 3-4 Ugin, Bant, and what would you say? Bant and Simic probably are the 2 I see the most. And those decks are just very straightforward. All in, I'm going to get to Ugin. Ugin will win the game. And you can build your deck with concessions to attacking all of these, but it's really hard to make sure you draw them in the right matchups, and it's also really hard to even know what a good hand is sometimes and what you're keeping against. So the ladder is all over the place. I don't think best of one has a consensus best deck. Like best of 3 has this boogeyman of the format like Bant Ramp and Temur that we know and love and are trying to figure out how to beat. In best of 1, it's like you don't know what you're up against. Is it going to be play no creatures and smash you with Ugin? Or is it going to be kill you on turn 3? And I don't know. I've had a lot of trouble with this. It seems like every time I skew my deck in one direction, I get completely nailed in the other. You know what I mean? The other day, I jumped on ladder and I had this sweet Golgari Veto mid-range combo deck that I really liked. And then I played against Ugin 5 matches in a row. 5 in a row. It's just no chance. Just no chance.
Yeah.
I got nothing in that matchup. So then I switched to Simic Flash. Yeah, I'll show you. I'm gonna rewind your Ugin, and I played against nothing but all these aggro decks for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
So it's been a battle. My experience has been kind of tough. How about you?
I've just been doing what I enjoy doing on the best of one ladder, which is just playing a fairly linear kind of aggro deck with a proactive plan and hoping to get there. I've been refining my green-white counters list and, did pretty well. It got me into Diamond with a 67% win rate. So I'm going to keep working on that, see if I can get it to Mythic, see if it's up to the task. That deck's been pretty fun, but I totally agree with you. I like the ladder, the best of one ladder does feel all over the place. Let's talk about some of these specific things that we're seeing. So another notable achievement in this last week is we saw arena player Witch reach number 1 Mythic playing mono black aggro. So that deck clearly can hold its own. It didn't top 8 the SCG event, but it's clearly a deck which is capable of laying on the beats. And it's basically doing your kind of what you would imagine the deck's doing. It's putting the embrace on the dinosaur and just hoping to get there.
Yeah, I did some work with mono black.
Mm-hmm.
I like it. I did something different for best of one where it was like, all right, we've got 4 of this aura in our deck. What if we added the Hateful Eidolon?
Oh, nice.
So if they actually kill the creature, we get some replacement effect with drawing cards. And that made me turn Eliminate, the removal spells like Eliminate and Grasp of Darkness. We turned those into Mire's Grasp and Deadweight to go with the Eidolon. And that was really effective because best of one has a lot of small creature strategies, but it's another one of those things where you don't want to draw those in bad matchups.
Yeah.
But I found it pretty good. I thought it was definitely consistent. The mana, like when you're not used to playing monocolor beatdown and you look at your hands and you're like, that's a keep, that's a keep, that's a keep, that's a keep. It's got creatures, it's got 2 or 3 lands, it's a keep. It feels really good after trying to manage like 3-color mana bases with tap lands and castles and all this.
So this was my experience playing against the mono black aggro deck because I haven't played with it, is that this deck feels like the most all-in aggro deck that I've seen on the ladder. It's
oh yeah.
It's just, I mean, it's just like kill them quick or bust, Yeah. And I kind of like actually your Eidolon version of the deck because I think it solves one of the biggest problems that I saw with the deck, which is just a almost total lack of card advantage. You're a deck which, okay, if you play a Rotting Regisaur, untap with it, discard a card, and then put an Embrace on it, and then your opponent kills the Reggie before it hits, I mean, I don't need you to tell me how much card disadvantage you just incurred with that sequence of events, right?
Yeah,
so,
and there are a lot of games where you hug your dino and pray.
Exactly.
There's just nothing else.
So it was kind of ironic because I was playing with like this Selesnya deck, which also doesn't particularly have very much card advantage in it, and I was just totally out carding these decks because I had Basri's Lieutenants, and when my creatures died, I got 2/2s, and when my opponent's creatures died, they turned into counters on my Scavenging Ooze, and I had a surprising amount of reach in the matchup, and they really didn't. So that was kind of like one of my big knocks on the deck, was I just felt like if Plan A, like if Plan A plus didn't work, I felt like you died. The deck just doesn't really feel like it has a Plan B. I feel like Castle Lochthwain is really not the Plan B that you want to be leaning on to get it done with this deck.
I'll give you a good old magic saying. When you kill your opponent who has 6 cards in their hand, it's a 6-for-0.
That's a good point. That's a good point. So I think that this is for the brave gamers. This is not for the coward gamers. You've got to believe your cards, believe they're going to get you there. So I did actually want to talk about Bluegreen Flash a little bit, and people are actually playing Rewind. And I don't know, like we were a little bit down on this card in our set review because we just felt like it was so weak to Mystical Dispute. But Turns out that if you do actually resolve a rewind, that's a pretty massive tempo swing in a game of Magic, right? I mean, if your opponent resolves rewind on your turn 4, counters something and untaps, you've got to feel like you probably just lost that game.
Yeah, the ideal rewind situation is so discouraging and so powerful, because the ideal rewind situation is that you're on the play and you have Growth Spiral, so on turn 3 you're going to rewind their spell and play your Nightpack Ambusher and have another counter spell in your hand, and there's just... it's over.
It's beyond game over.
It's over, man. We're done. And the truth is, that is a powerful play pattern, very hard to beat. I was running Bluegreen Flash, somebody did give me a very hard time where I had that play pattern, and I countered their Mayhem Devil, and I actually had 2 rewinds. I countered their Mayhem Devil, I countered a Witch's Oven, then I played the Ambusher, and the next turn they cast another Mayhem Devil.
Oh no.
And like, it was an epic game that my good stories always end with me winning. I did eventually win, but that was what it took. It took 3 Mayhem Devils and like 2 Witch's Ovens and a Corvold from them to even give me a run for my money.
So they're nut draw, basically.
Yeah. They're nut, yeah. And it does feel like it's another one of those super polarizing draws where if they have this, it's so frustrating. So as the opponent, it's like, well, I didn't play any Magic today. And I do hate that those exist, but the fact that it is present means some people are going to try it. The question comes down to consistency. And it feels like the problem with Bluegreen Flash is still that it doesn't have the card advantage. If it can't do that, then eventually they run out of counters. Eventually they run out of things to do. Eventually something powerful resolves. Eventually Hydroid Krasis runs away with the game on the other side, or some card advantage engine takes hold. So I think it's a problem, but we'll see. Blue-green Flash against mono-green. Let's go.
Yeah.
I want to know what that's like.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
It's probably a fun matchup. I think I watched that matchup at the CFB Pro event last weekend, and it was a really exciting matchup. I think the Flash player won. Yeah. They were also, this is pretty fun, they were bringing in Elder Gargaroth out of the sideboard, and I'll tell you what, that is an effective sideboard option against basically any aggro deck.
That's nice. If you can ramp into that, that's nice.
Yeah, I mean, like, I was actually watching your video, CGB, your Sublime Epiphany video, and, like, that Elder Gargaroth just, like, single-handedly shut down the mono-red deck. It's like, how can they ever beat that card?
We kind of laughed at it being a green Baneslayer Angel because Baneslayer's not great right now.
Yeah.
But the point is that Baneslayer is great. It's the format context of what's most popular. But if you're in a matchup where that's not the case, then, it's really freaking good. And green, a deck like Simic Flash hasn't had access to anything like that. A 5-mana giant monster that just takes over the game on its own.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Flash in the past had to play Lovestruck Beast to try to have some game against red decks, and admittedly that is also quite a good card against the mono-red deck, but it's not an Elder Gargaroth, that's for sure. I think that Gargaroth actually highlights the fact... Okay, so you say that it's a Baneslayer Angel, but would Baneslayer Angel be good against mono-red right now? My guess is probably not that good.
Oh, it's fine. It can probably not... It keeps you from completely losing to most things that they do. Even other than Embercleave on Annex, you're covered.
Yeah. I just think like the Gargaroth having more toughness and giving you the benefit like when you declare the block as opposed to when the combat actually happens, I think are a number of things in its favor. So yeah, I think Gargaroth is definitely not the kind of card you want to main deck, but I think coming out of the board against people who aren't playing the big, scary, over-the-top decks in the format, it probably does pretty well.
Agree.
Okay, let's talk about Terror of the Peaks, because that's kind of like the other side of the Gargaroth coin in the format. People have actually been having a lot of fun with this deck. I've seen a deck going around. I know that Yeoman5 brewed a version of this deck. I don't know if he was the originator of the deck, but a Temur Elementals build running Terror of the Peaks, basically just trying to ramp it out or get it on the board with the Emergent Ultimatum.
I heard Brad Nelson talking about this. I've played it a few times. How about you?
Yeah, I have not played it. Actually, I have not played it myself. I've played against it. I think I've managed to smash it every time because my kind of like mid-range aggro deck was just faster than what they were trying to do. But it's definitely the kind of deck where, like, if they resolve a couple of ultimatums, it's pretty much game over on the spot.
Yeah, this deck is going over the top of a bunch of decks trying to go over the top. And I still don't... Like, when I think about it, like, facing off against the Temur Rec deck that Aaron used to win the SCG, it's like, I don't think it goes even big enough, even with Genesis Ultimatum and Terror.
No.
Yeah, I know, weird, because the explosion still strikes face. But I do love that this deck has a few copies of Yorion. Oh my gosh, Yorion and Terror of the Peaks.
Savage.
I wish I'd thought of that one.
Yeah.
I have enjoyed Terror of the Peaks in various Gruul decks and seeing what it can do. Then I got into Temur Terror of the Peaks with Uro. Uro and Terror is amazing.
Nasty. Yeah.
Yeah, just nasty. 6 damage for 3 mana, and you gain life, and you draw a card. And if you have 4 more mana, you do it again.
I think what we and some other people missed about Terror of the Peaks is that it's not the card that you resolve on turn 4 or 5, spending all your mana on it. It's the card that you try to resolve on turn 6 or 7 when you have like 10 plus mana on the board, when you can either just ultimatum into it or whether you can just throw it down with an aura, right? And I think if you manage to get something like that off, then you've already got your money's worth out of it, more or less.
Sure.
That's probably what we all missed about this card, is that we were used to thinking of it as a card that you would just tap out for as soon as you could, and that's not really the way that you want to play it.
I'm pretty sure we signed off last week with me saying I was going to work on Terror of the Peaks and Genesis Ultimatum.
Oh, that's right. It's Genesis, not Emergent Ultimatum. I always get them confused, but yes.
Sure.
Yes. There's a lot of them.
Or you just rewrite my history to make me wrong.
It's a fun combo, and I watched Bloody play this list on stream, and she got Ugin'd, and boy, did it not matter. She untapped with 20 lands and a copy of Genesis Ultimatum in hand, and it was just off to the races again. Ugin, who cares about an Ugin?
Sounds fun.
So yeah, this deck can definitely, like, if you get into the mid to late game with it, it can just be pretty unstoppable. What else is happening here in Standard? Some people have been talking about blue-white flyers making a re-emergence with cards like Lofty Denial and the card I'm forgetting, the 2/2 flyer that makes her flyers cheaper. I've run into this deck on ladder a little bit, and while it does seem better than the flyers lists of yesteryear, I'm not really sure that it is adding enough to like actually be a top deck. Have you played against it, CGB?
I've played against it and a little bit with it, even though it's usually not my cup of tea. But a 2-mana counterspell in Lofty Denial it appeals a little more to my nature. The deck has the same problems that all 2-color aggro decks seem to have in this format, which is that they just can't curve out reliably with mana the current way that it is. And, Once Upon a Time was supposed to be our mana fixing for this format for aggro and had to be banned for various real reasons. But now you're just stuck with kind of a bunch of basics or tap lands and you can't do what you need to do. But I do think it might be best of one... worthy. I think it could be a deck. It's very difficult to beat it with ramp or any kind of go over the top strategy. Here's another point I'll give to mono green, because I learned this really quickly playing a Flyers deck and playing with Demonic Embrace. Why does every freaking card in that deck have reach?
Yes.
When did this happen? I thought Flyers were supposed to be good against green decks. No, everything. It's probably on Questing Beast if you keep reading. Everything has reach.
I think I've run versions of mono green that had literally 12 reaches in them.
I'm not happy. It's not okay.
Yeah, it comes up.
When you build your evasive aggro deck expecting it to, evade something, and your opponent has an Arboreal Grazer and a Stonecoil Serpent and a Gem Razor and a Crawl Harpooner on the freaking battlefield. It's hard to tolerate.
Green's really got the skies covered lately, that's for sure.
I mean, there should be double flying. You know, you should be able to fly over something with reach. Yeah, stratosphere. Yeah.
Stratosphere.
But, I mean, the blue-white is okay. I still think Rally with Wings is a pretty good card. Brazen Borrower is a good card for it. I think that Safara is terrible. If any of you are running the tap my 4 flyers to make a 7/7 Angel, I think if you get away from that and focus on leaving up mana for Lofty Denial, you'll be in a better place.
I'm so with you.
I'm playing the Angelic Ascension card.
Oh.
I think that's what it's called. In the Flyers deck?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That card needs to see more play. I mean, maybe it's just not the right time for it, but I'll be shocked if there's a standard in which that card's not pretty good. Especially after Teferi rotates. So I would definitely try it in this list for sure. I also just wanted to note that some of these Gruul decks have been playing Rada. And I don't know. Are we still not a buyer on Rada? Or is it proving its mettle a little bit?
I've played a number of lands off of my Rada. I've also been in a lot of situations where tapping the 6 mana to make it huge with an Ember Cleave was my only chance to win. I still don't like it, though. It just feels too slow. It feels like you're giving the opponent too much opportunity to do the thing their deck wants to do, which is probably more powerful than yours. I'm not a fan. It's not terrible, but I just think you should be making the opponent die faster, I think, for this meta.
Yeah, I saw Andrea Mangucci trying it out in his Gruul deck, and he ended up replacing it with Rhythm of the Wild, of all things. So if that tells you anything about what's important in this format, which is haste. If you're playing Gruul, your creatures need to say haste on them, or have a very good reason why they don't say haste on them. So I think that still stands. I mean, people forget about the Hellkite, but like Hellkite is still a card, you know?
Oh, sure. I put out a Gruul video this last week with 4 Hellkites and 4 Terrors and 4 Radas.
Ooh, all right. So we're really talking like big Gruul here.
Yeah, big Gruul. I think the only 2 drops were like, if you count Bone Crusher Giant, Arboreal Grazer, and Marauding Raptor.
This is what I want to see. I'm sure this has happened, right? But like a Gruul player running out of gas who's forced to attack with an Arboreal Grazer and put a sword on it.
Dude, no. That matters. that Grazer attacker to cleave is important. Been there, done that.
Love it. Just the bravest and, you know, Sir Grazer at your service.
That's as active as that sloth gets.
All right, well, that's been kind of a fair roundup, I think, of standard week 1. Moving into week 2, what are you going to be playing on the ladder, CGB? What are your thoughts about how you want to be attacking this meta?
I actually have a lot of different red, black, and Jund food. Basically, a lot of Witch's Oven decks that I haven't had enough time to figure out if they are good now. White Cat Oven decks that might want to run Luminous Broodmoth have cards like Selfless Savior now that are very interesting to me. In Jund, I've got a deck that I'm calling Jun Dragons, where I cut like Claim the Firstborn and Priest from the Jund Sacrifice deck, and instead I play the Gadrak.
Nice.
Treasures,
yeah.
Right? And I play that with a bunch of Mayhem Devils, a bunch of Korbolds, and I've got a bunch of food cards, including 4 copies of Giant Opportunity.
Oh,
to make
snap.
Yeah, to make the 3 foods. So I have all these things to attack with the Gadrak with, and then get the treasures to sack to the Mayhem Devil and the Korvold. It's kind of gross.
How about Solemn Simulacrum? That seems like it might be a good fit for that deck.
I mean, it's an artifact. I just don't
a little slow,
I
maybe
want that much mana. Yeah, usually though, the way that it works is if I actually play a Gadrak and untap with it, now I need to make things die quickly, and if I spend my turn on here's a Solemn and some ramp, I didn't make enough treasures, because what you want out of the Gadrak, you want to get like 1 good attack in, then assume something bad happens to it because everybody ignores it. Nobody thinks you're going to Giant Opportunity, you know, and make 3 foods out of nowhere. So you want like 1 attack out of it, but then you want a big pile of treasures. You want to make a lot of things die so that your Mayhem Devil and your Korvold goes absolutely ballistic. So I don't think Solemn is chipping in there, but more things that make food. Like I used to have Ginger Brute in this deck because it It's a food.
Yeah, it's a food and an artifact. Gotta love that.
Well, if you have a witch's oven and a ginger brute and a cat, you can sacrifice the ginger brute to the cat, bring back the cat, put it in the oven, and you get 2 treasures for the Gadrak.
Side note on the ginger brute, what's the biggest tilt with that card? And I watched someone do this against my friend Doug Sluggins on the stream last night. So that card has 2 activated abilities. One of them is the one that you always want to use, and the other one eats the food. And so there's this person who was getting ready to swing in with their 2 ginger brutes, ate one of them, and you see this long pause. And then the next one gets activated to get through with the ability. So just got to be careful if you're running that card in your deck.
That's a good one. That one should have a "Are you sure?"
Yeah, are you sure? Exactly. Well, I'm going to be sticking to my guns, playing what I like. I'm going to be trying to refine this Selesnya list to actually see if it can keep up with the mono green in the standard. So I'll be reporting back on that, an amount that is appropriate to maintain our friendship.
Friendship
to maintain your motivation to co-host on this podcast.
Okay. No. I am doing a service by being here, by balancing out this mono green strong bias, as if attacking with a gem razor on a stone coil serpent is all that Magic the Gathering is about. I'm doing my due diligence for the 10% of listeners out there who are evil like me and believe that just exiling all your permanents is the way that we should be playing Magic the Gathering.
I feel like I'm the Michael J. Flores to your Patrick Chapin. Every time they talk, the conversation ends up being through the lens of mono red because MJ just plays so much mono red and Patrick's just not here for it.
These are boomer Magic podcasters, for those of you wondering.
Top level podcast.
who I love top level podcast, who I love and respect.
They're wonderful.
And I use boomer is an affectionate term.
Yeah, so go check them out for sure. They're really worth listening to. All right, well, I think that's going to do it for us for this week. Thanks so much for joining us again for another episode. You can find Arena Craft Podcast in most of the places you might want to find it. Please subscribe in your podcast listening app of choice. Oh, and actually, I wanted to say one thing, CGB. I wanted to give a call out. Let's see if I can pull this up real quick. I was looking at our iTunes account for Arena Craft Podcast.
We got a review?
We got this little review in there. There are a number of them, but we recently had a review by a user named RK Chapman saying CGB is the best! ! He is the best. Subscribe now. So saying you are the best once was not sufficient for Rick Chapman. He had to say it again. And I just wanted to shout this out because people really like CGB, and I know that a lot of your audience listens to this podcast. And for every iTunes review that you leave that says something about CGB, I will read it on the show and make him blush and laugh. So just wanted to put the word out there.
My YouTube audience is going to eat this up and say nice stuff. They're sweethearts. But if the Twitch audience hears this, you are going to get, oh no, this is going to go bad.
I'm just saying. Get trolly. Just put...
let's get this right. I need to know for sure.
Okay.
Any review, does it have to be, it should be 5 stars. Any 5-star review that mentions me and uses reasonable language, let's just say, Arjuna will read on the cast. Is that accurate?
Non-profane language is my bar.
Okay. There you go, guys.
It can be either positive or negative about CGB, but just use your parlor language. Use your dinner party language.
Say it to my face, baby.
Say it to his face. So you can find us on iTunes, and we also are on YouTube. And then the Discord's been kind of popping lately, so you can find the link to that in the show notes if you want as well. And you can also follow CGB's content, Covert, Go Blue, and all the places. He is on YouTube. That's an excellent place to see his daily content. He also streams Monday through Thursday, 4 p.m. Eastern. So that's a really excellent way to catch him. And CGB, I'm looking forward to revisiting the standard format next week.
Thank you. I am really looking forward to it. And thank you for all those kind words. I just want to say that, Arjuna, you are also streaming. So join the Discord and watch for when Arjuna does his mono green and limited, whatever that is, streamy things.
Yeah, I've been wanting to stream lately. Had a combination of like various regular life stuff that's been getting in the way of it. But yes, I have been streaming a little bit more, and I hope to continue streaming a little bit more with each month. So thanks for that shout out. All right, thanks so much for listening, and we will catch you guys next week.
Later.